What's going on, everybody? What an exciting end to the NBA regular season, and what an exciting few days of the NBA play-in tournament. Did I not say that it has been a huge success? One, because teams have been battling it out that last week of the season rather than having super lopsided games that don't matter. There's been some positioning battling going on, right? Down the stretch of the regular season. Then now, once we established who the playing teams were, well, we've had some absolutely great games. Obviously, I hope that you guys were able to watch some of those. The Hornets taking on the Heat was one hell of a game. Kobe White hitting that shot to tie it up. It goes into overtime, and then the Hornets end up taking care of business. That was a great game. You had the Suns taking on Denny Advia and the Blazers with Denny Advia putting up a 40-piece, getting the win on the road, clinching a playoff spot. So now they'll take on the San Antonio Spurs. And then obviously last night, I mean, let's just talk about the main game that we had with Steph Curry coming on in the second half and willing the Warriors into a road victory, keeping their season alive and eliminating the Clippers. And by doing so, helping the Thunder, because now the Thunder have a lottery pick in this draft. Yes, the OKC Thunder, the defending NBA champions who are trying to go back-to-back, will have a lottery pick in this upcoming draft, thanks to the Warriors beating the Clippers last night. And then obviously the other game was the Sixers clinching their playoff spot. They will take on the Boston Celtics by defeating the Orlando Magic, who are down to the last gasp. And honestly, they're going to take on they're going to take on the Hornets in a battle for the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, and talk about two teams with completely different vibes going on, right? The Magic look like they just don't want to be around each other anymore. It looks like they are probably dreading having another game on their season, while the Hornets, this whole season has been a huge plus for them. Honestly, even if they miss the playoffs, will it be disappointing? Sure. But this is a huge win, a step in the right direction, because think about it this way. If the Hornets miss the playoffs because they lose this playing game to the Orlando Magic, who next year is going to think that the Hornets are going to be any worse, right? The expectation is going to be like, hey, Charlotte's coming on strong, all right? They're a young team. A lot of their young guys are only going to get better. They have Con Knipple, who's, in the Rookie of the Year, possibly going to win it in the Rookie of the Year race. And you only expect that team to get better. They're young. None of their main guys are even over 30 years old, really. And again, so it's a complete crazy contrast. A great season so far for the Hornets. They stay alive with an exciting win, and now they get to try to clinch a playoff spot. And obviously we would have a hell of a series if they take on Detroit. Not sure about the length of the series and how many games, but I definitely think that it's going to be a fiery series. The biggest fight this year in the NBA was pretty much between these two teams, with Isaiah Stewart and all that going on. So we'll see how it goes. But I just think that they're on completely opposite sides of the vibes spectrum. And I don't see a world in which the Hornets lose to Orlando. But, hey, you never know. Crazier things have happened. We will see, and that's why we will tune in. But so far, the play-in tournament has been a huge success. But we'll have another podcast later this week before the actual NBA 1-8 matchup, 2-7 matchups, all the real NBA playoffs gets going. I'll talk about maybe some predictions. Maybe I'll also talk about what 5 teams are facing the most pressure going into these NBA playoffs here in 2026. But we're talking about NBA awards today, and let's just begin with talking about a couple things that actually was in the news today. Luka Doncic and Cade Cunningham. So remember the 65-game threshold that they didn't meet by one game each, essentially? Well, that NBA, they essentially fought the league on it and said, hey, look, there's a clause in there that says for, crazy circumstances, players can kind of put in their 2 cents about why they should be eligible if they don't meet the criteria. Well, they both did that. Cade Cunningham had a collapsed lung. He rushed back to play in the last couple games of the season to try to get close to that 65-game threshold. And I do believe that is an, unforeseen circumstance. A collapsed lung is serious. This is why this rule is in that clause for the 65 games. It's if a guy's had a hell of a season, he's all NBA, it's game 65, 2 minutes in, he tears his ACL. That would be approved, because they would say, hey, look, it wasn't him choosing not to play. It was something serious. So he, was so close to it that we will allow essentially that wiggle room. There's a gray area, right? And it's up to the league's discretion. And so that's what that rule was put in there for. So with Kate Cunningham getting a collapsed lung, that's pretty intense. And then him, even in my opinion, showing that he's willing to come back quicker than anybody has ever done from a collapsed lung, just to play in the last couple games of the season with really nothing to play for the Pistons. That's what this rule is there for, the 65-game rule, I'm saying, because we want guys to try to push through and try to play and not just sit out because they've already collected their checks. So that 65-game rule worked in this situation with Kate Cunningham. And so I completely am with the league letting him be eligible. Even though he didn't meet the 65 games, he showed that he was willing to push through, to get back as soon as he can and play in every single game that he possibly could. And it was a kind of I don't want to call it a freak injury, but essentially just a freak thing to get a collapsed lung playing basketball. Now, the other one that was approved by the league is Luka Doncic. And Luka's saying, hey, I had to go to Europe for the birth of my child, and I missed 2 games, and this is why. And then I got hurt in that game against OKC, so I didn't meet the criteria. And he's essentially filing saying, because I had to go for the birth of my child, that's why. And honestly, I don't agree with this one. This now makes, look, everything's a gray area regardless. So whatever I think, whatever the media people think, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, the NBA has full authority and full power. Now, we can give our opinions and all that, and that's great. But it is, what we need to be real about is it's the opinion of the NBA. And if we disagree with it, it doesn't really matter, because it's their opinion, and we allowed this to happen. Because if the rule didn't give them a chance to have an opinion, then technically speaking, Cade wouldn't have been eligible. If we wanted it fully black and white, that we would have said, well, Kate Cunningham, I know you tried to get back. I know you had a freak injury with the collapsed lung. You still didn't meet 65 games, so you ain't going to be eligible. But most of us don't want that, because we want common sense to prevail. So that's where, in my opinion, and again, I just disagree, but it's ultimately the league's decision, and I'm fine with it, because that's why I'm fine with the Kate Cunningham decision, right? So with the league, with Luka, I'm like, you chose, which I support, like, you should definitely go be there for the birth of your kid, for sure. But that's a personal decision, right? I mean, you chose to do that, and that's totally cool. And mind you, he missed a game earlier this year because he was suspended for too many technicals. Now, if that hadn't happened, my common sense would say, all right, well, one, he would have been pretty much even closer or there at the 65 games. Let me see exactly how many games Luka Doncic played this year. Games played. Let's see, 64. He was 1 game shy. Okay. So I actually would have said, no, I'm not going to give it to you because you went for the birth of your child. You should have not gotten suspended and quit complaining so much, and you would have been eligible, because that would have been a game that you would have had played and met the 65 game threshold. So I wouldn't have given it to Luka. I think I like the 65 game rule. I know that people don't like it and people think it's really bad, but to me, it's worked. To me, Kate Cunningham pushing through to play and show that he is willing to do everything that he can to be on that court is the reason why I think this works. Okay? I want that. I want the league to have essentially more power to be able to not be toyed around by the players. Now, is it in the players' right and best interest maybe to take advantage of the rules? Absolutely. Do I blame them? Not at all. Like, if you can get away with it, go ahead and get away with it. But I like that this is the league saying, like, all right, enough getting away with it. We got to put our foot down. But at the same time, if you're going to put your foot down, then with Luka, I don't think we should allow him to be eligible for end of the year awards, because, like I said, this is a chance to put your foot down again, be the quote unquote parent, and say, hey, you would have had it if you wouldn't have complained so much and gotten so many technicals. So that's on you. Would Luka have been pissed? Would Laker fans have been pissed? Sure. And people would have hated the 65 game rule even more, because they would have said, like, how is Luka not in the all NBA conversation? But that's when the league should have said, how? Go talk to him and tell him to stop complaining and not getting so many technicals, and he would have been in there. So quit blaming us, right? Again, people will always disagree and agree and have their opinions. So I'm all for it. Whatever your opinion is, I respect it. Everyone can have an opinion. But the opinion in power here is the NBA's. And so, again, I agree with one of them with the Kate Cunningham situation, disagree with the Luka Doncic situation. So it is what it is. Let's take a look at awards. All right, we'll start with Coach of the Year. Coach of the year, tough one, right? Because there's a few guys that are definitely deserving of this. Mitch Johnson has the Spurs as number 2 seed in the Western Conference. All right. I mean, they finished 62-20. You could give it to him. JB Bickerstaff has the Detroit Pistons first in the East, 60-22 record. Again, Cade Cunningham missed some time. So you look at this team with the Pistons and you say, no one thought they'd be the number 1 seed in the East at the start of the season. Maybe a few people thought they would take that jump. They were the 6th seed last year. But at the same time, people had the Knicks, the Cavaliers. People were expecting things out of them. I don't think Detroit was really, I shouldn't say no one thought they'd be the 1 seed, because they did show promise. Cade took that leap. So, and they had a pretty good season last year, and you could tell that they were ready to take that next step. So I take that back. Maybe not no one, but they certainly weren't up there with like the Knicks and the Cavaliers, and people thinking that they would be the finals team in the East. And now it's a very real possibility that they could be. And the other team up there with a coach of the year candidate is the Boston Celtics with Joe Mazzulla. This team finished the season 56-26. Okay. People, I mean, their over under was like in the 30s. People did not expect them to be the number 2 seed in the East. However, some didn't sleep on them, because what the Celtics have that people tend to forget when they're predicting how teams will be or will do is culture. And what I mean by culture is a win-first mentality. What I mean by culture is we're not tanking. What I mean by culture is even in the last game of the season, when they're going to play all their backups, they still can compete against another NBA team who should be desperate for a win, like the Orlando Magic were in the last game of the season, and they took on the Celtics backups, and the Celtics beat them. Okay? The reason that happens is not because of talent, and it is partially because of coaching, but it's also because of culture, because there's also an expectation that we win every game we play. There is a bar that's set so high that mediocre is not acceptable. That if those bench guys go out there and lay an egg and don't try, they'll be sent down to the G League team if the Celtics feel like they have to. Because I don't care who you are, what your name is, and what the name on the back of the jersey is. If you're out there on the court, you're going to give it your all, and you're going to have winning as your priority. And that's what the Celtics have. So with all that being said, it is, I don't know which way I'm going to go, but truthfully, oh man, to me, look, Mitch Johnson gets overlooked because of Wemby, obviously, but I know he's probably not going to win it, but I think he is very overlooked about Wemby. I don't know which direction to go here, guys. I need help. Even by process of elimination, I don't know who to take away. I will not give it to Joe Mazzulla. I'll put that out there, even though I kind of want to. But again, I just spoke about it. I think culture has a lot to do with it, which is a big part of him, but it also the caliber of players that have been taught the right way. You know, Tatum, Brown, those guys grew up with this Celtics standard, and that carries forward and helps a guy like Joe Mazzulla. I love Joe Mazzulla, but also 56 wins is less than 60 and less than 62 wins. So to me, it's between Mitch Johnson, even though Joe Mazzulla, I think, is the betting favorite, and JB Bickerstaff. And you know what? I'll give it to JB Bickerstaff with the Pistons. 60-22, number 1 seed in the East. Only 2 wins back of the Spurs. And truthfully, I think talent-wise, San Antonio has more talent on that roster than, in my opinion, than the Detroit Pistons have. So because of that, I'm going to give it to JB Bickerstaff. That will be my coach of the year. Most improved player, guess what? It's going to be another Atlanta Hawk. How can it not be Jalen Johnson, right? This guy, I mean, he's putting up, let's take a look at his stats for this year, but he's putting up some real numbers. First-time All-Star. We got Jalen Johnson, NFL player stats instead of the Atlanta Hawks forward. So we're looking at his stats right here. So Jalen Johnson this year improved in points per game. He went from 18.9 last year to 22.5. He upped his rebounding from 10 to 10.3. Whereas his assists per game, that improved from 5 assists per game to 7.9 assists per game. And really, if you look at the Hawks, I mean, look at where they're at. And when he started playing more, once Trae Young was out of there, and the ball was in his hands more, Atlanta just started winning. Remember, they went on a crazy win streak down the stretch of the season, and that's why they're in the playoffs as the 6th seed this year. So that's who would be my most improved player, Jalen Johnson. I just think it's more than the numbers. The numbers are at 3 points per game better or whatever. Like, that's not crazy impressive. But if you watch it, he started 72 games this year. Last year, he started 36. So he made that leap from, being a role player to being possibly a franchise guy if he keeps on this trajectory and keeps playing like this. So that would be my guy for most improved player. Sixth man of the year, I think it has to be Keldon Johnson with the Spurs, just because, one, that team has won 62 games. He comes off the bench. He plays well. I mean, he averaged 13 points per game this year. If you look also at the fact that, he didn't start any game, so he's been a true bench guy. It's not like there's some mixture there, some starts that to help with the numbers. And he's just been a real good player for the Spurs. He only plays about 23 minutes a game, 13 points per game, 5 rebounds. He is a spark plug for them. And I think it helps that in the past, when the Spurs weren't very good, before Wemby was there, he was a starter. So he played a lot of minutes. He has that experience, and he was willing to take this backseat and this role and embrace it and be a sixth man for them. He's the new Ginobili for them, essentially. I'm not putting him in that category, but I'm just saying sixth man of the year, Spurs, that's how it goes. All right, defensive player of the year. I'm not going to talk much about this one. It's got to be Wembanyama. I mean, that's it. There's nothing else to say. The guy is just, when he's on the court, teams suck offensively because he makes that much of a difference. Nothing more to be said there. All right, the last two, MVP and the rookie of the year. Obviously, we'll keep MVP for last, but rookie of the year, a lot of people have been talking about, is it Cooper Flagg? Is it Con Knipple? Look, I love Con Knipple, but there is no way that this award will go to Con Knipple, in my opinion. Okay. Are the Hornets better than the Mavericks? Absolutely. Did he have a better winning? I mean, it's really, that's it. Okay. Because if you look at just the fact of how, if you watch a game, if you are to redraft right now after the season, would you pick Con Knipple over Cooper Flagg? And the answer is no, you wouldn't, right? I mean, Cooper Flagg was the Mavericks essentially this year, right? They said, here, kid, you got the ball. You just do what you got to do. Was he on a bad team? Absolutely. They only finished with 26 wins this year. The Hornets had 44. That's a huge difference. But is that huge difference, solely because of Con Knipple? No, it's because the Hornets have a competent coach. They've drafted well. They've, put pieces around there. LaMelo Ball took a step forward this year. So again, when you look at it that way, again, I love Con Knipple, okay? But don't get it twisted. Like the year LeBron James won Rookie of the Year, D. Wade also had a great rookie year, okay? But you're not going to give it to Chris Bosh. You're not going to give it to Carmelo because they had good rookie years. You're going to give it to the guy that is the best player, and he is the Rookie of the Year. And that's just, we look at Cooper Flagg's numbers. He had a 50-point game. I think it was the second to last game of the season. So when we compare stats, again, it's not all stats based. I mean, Con had 18.5 points per game, 5 rebounds, 3 assists on the winning team. Absolutely. But Cooper Flagg had 21 points per game, 6.7 rebounds, 4.5 assists per game. Like, very similar stats in a sense, but you just see it with Cooper Flagg in a sense where, again, if you switch the guys, if you traded the guys, let's say at the start of the season, Con Knipple was drafted by the Mavericks and Cooper Flagg went to the Hornets. Are you telling me that the Mavericks would have had a better record than what they finished with, and that the Hornets would have finished with a worse record? I would argue the opposite. I would say the Mavericks wouldn't have gotten to 26 wins this year, and I would argue that the Hornets, instead of having 44, might have had 46 wins this year with Cooper Flagg instead of Con Knipple. So again, I love Con Knipple, great rookie, no doubt. But Rookie of the Year is Cooper Flagg's all the way, okay? I mean, again, I just think there's, in the history of how we've done this award, it's not most impactful rookie. That's not really how this is measured. It's measured as pretty much, for the most part, which rookie 5 years from now is going to be higher in the current player rankings. and it's Cooper Flag. And you know it. We know it. That is the Mavericks franchise guy. Okay. Con Knipple is not the Hornets franchise guy. Might he be? Maybe, but I don't think so. So again, that's just how the award has always gone. And last but not least, obviously, is the MVP of the year. And I said this earlier. For me, the winning is what it's going to come down to. OKC finished 2 games above the Spurs. So I'm giving it to SGA. What SGA has done this year is, again, he missed some time. And when he missed some time, the team was still good. But when he's in there, they're practically unstoppable. If you watch the games, it feels and looks like this guy doesn't miss. Wembanyama, very, very deserving as well. And, I even argue, part of me would give Jokic the edge over Wembanyama because I do think, and close to SGA, because I think if you take Nikola Jokic out of the Denver Nuggets, I don't know that team is a playoff team. Hell, I don't even know if they win 37 and make the play-in without Jokic. So to me, if you're actually talking like most important player, it's Jokic, right, to their team. Again, without SGA, the Thunder still had a significantly over 500 record. They still were winning most of their games. And so did the Nuggets. They should give them credit that the 14 or so games that Jokic missed, they still, floated. They maintained a good level of basketball. But in the grand scheme of things, this team isn't winning 45 games without Jokic for the season. And again, Wembanyama, you take him out of the Spurs, they're definitely not winning 62. Hell, I don't think they're winning 50, but they're deeper. They're a deeper team. They have depth. They have Stephon Castle's been incredible. They have Dylan Harper in his rookie year playing well. So they have talent there around them. Now, is he the most impactful on that team? Without a doubt, absolutely. He makes up for most of their wins. But if you look at win shares and all that, I'll look at that actually. Let's see, in the win shares column, who are the leaders in the NBA win shares? And how do we do this? Here we go. Nikola Jokic leads the league in total win shares. Hadn't even looked that up before. Followed by top performers like Kat. Kind of tough that he's in that. And Victor Wembanyama. So again, Jalen Johnson is also in the top 10. So it's one of those things where if you think about it, Jokic just has such an impact that I think he should be probably number 2 in my MVP ranking. So I would go SGA, Jokic, and Wembanyama. But Wemby is I don't know. It's tough. But I definitely would have picked SGA. He's my MVP, and that's the way I see it. And that's who I've got for my NBA awards. I hope you guys agree with most of them, but if you disagree, feel free to let me know. We can have a healthy debate about it, talk about it. Let me know why you disagree. And we'll talk about more NBA playoffs here later this week. Can't wait to do that. Can't wait to watch these games. It's going to be a great NBA playoff, especially the Western Conference. Denver taking on the Wolves in round 1. Brutal, because both of those teams, neither of those teams, should I say, should be out in round 1, but that's going to happen, and that's crazy. So anyway, 2 more playing games to watch. I'm excited for that. We got the Warriors going to Phoenix to take on the Suns. Winner takes the 8th seed. And then in the Eastern Conference, the Hornets going on the road to take on the Orlando Magic. Winner there takes the 8th seed, and they match up with the Detroit Pistons. I mean, I think it'll be a good game considering the Magic gave the Sixers a good run for their money yesterday. But again, teams that are just on opposite sides of the vibes, scale. We'll see how that ends up playing out. So I'll talk to you all on the next one. Thanks for watching.